Hi there, just slowly going through the fairly recently released leaked document, this 150-page document. Whoever's leaked it, it's very helpful. I'm just trying to pick up some points en route. A bit sporadic at the moment, but one thing sticks out is that when they're asking Dr. Nim Subudar, who is the lead neonatologist for the network, who's based at LWH, I think. Nim Subudar is really immediately on the side, backing his consultant friends at COCH and saying that they're not outliers, pretty much, in terms of this idea of how often they're there, even, they're not outliers. In other words, other places are just the same. Other places, other hospitals are similar, really, and that they're. And then he strokes their ego by saying they're exemplary in terms of their involvement with the steering group. But how is the steering group directly impacting how often they're there to be available and to do ward rounds appropriately, to do them? What is the steering group, the exemplary involvement in the steering group? How is that affecting day-to-day cover on the unit? At the CDOP meeting, you have a gentleman called Dr. Raj Mittal. He's also another paediatrician at Countess of Chester. And I just found out he's another expert witness as well. He's another person with a medico-legal career on the side, as is indeed Dr. Yoxall now. I'm not sure when Dr. Yoxall started his, but Dr. Mittal, who's at that CDOP meeting, is another medico-legal expert for hire, and he's on a pretty big website that's got about 500 experts on them that you can contact if you wish. And then just going over again, I think there's so much in this. There's got to be 4th of May email to his fellow gang members from Ravi Jayaram on the 4th of May. To Susie Holt, Breary, Saladi, Dr. McGuigan, Dr. V, Dr. ZA. Dr. V is also Dr. B. And Dr. ZA is Dr. C. It's madness. But it's going over the bit now. So I want to look at this little bit here that says, let me just check it. And maybe this has been said elsewhere and by other people, but there's no harm in saying it again, or maybe I've said it already as well, but it struck me today. This is Jayaram's email. He's talking about baby number 3 and about a collapse. Now, I'm not sure what baby that is, because you've got numbers at Thirlwall, letters in the trial, and then this email is written before there ever was an investigation. So what's baby number 3? Who is baby number 3? Does it correlate to an indictment baby? But he makes the point in it. He's talking about page 6 of the of the report. They're trying to work up to, as he says earlier in his email, pique the interest of the police. So page 6 regarding baby 3, and he says noted to have unusual patches of pinkish discoloration on the skin on background of pale stroke blue discoloration, which is pretty much, he's lifted that from the Leon Tanswell paper. But he's saying noted to have. So when did this happen? Quite some time ago. And the point is that it wasn't noted. There are no notes of that. There were no contemporaneous notes of it made. So if there were no notes, why is he saying noted to have? Is that him saying, well, I can't put, I've just remembered there was. I didn't note it at the time, but I've got that in my mind. I've just remembered it, and I'm gonna put noted to make it sound stronger, more official. In other words, that it was noted at the time. So he's getting away with putting noted when it wasn't noted, because he doesn't want to say, well, I've read this paper in between, and Oh yeah, yeah, it was like that. The description in the paper, in the Lee and Tanswell paper, and I'll put noted then. I'll put noted so people think I actually noted it at the time, and it didn't come. My new memory of it didn't come just after the paper, but it was there originally and then confirmed by the paper that I saw afterwards. None of it's right, as we all know. And then going on to the when he's talking about baby K, obviously he's not calling baby K, but this is something I've been banging on loads of times, is that it's all from notes, and that those notes, I suspect, have been doctored, excised, adulterated, cut and paste, no, not cut and paste, changed after the event, to not give away things. In other words, to take out the line about that nurse Lucy Letby at incubator and called Dr. Jayaram to inform of low saturations. He's writing that from a note. Another reason I'm just thinking that again today, and it's hitting me with a renewed force, is this line he says about baby K, sudden deterioration at 3:50. Now, he's not going to remember the exact time all that time later. That's from a note. And so when he ends up in court, and you've got the preposterous situation where Myers is saying, "Isn't it amazing how it's amazing how you remember the exact time you looked at your watch?" Well, he didn't remember the time he looked at his watch. It originally was in some kind of note in this file, talking about this figure of 3:50, by which time Nurse Williams is back in the room, as we know, because they got the door data wrong. And then in the retrial, they had to make the time earlier. They had to really go against what the original notes were. That 3:50 time he's writing here is from a note. He's not writing, I'm not saying he would anyway, but he's not writing it in there 3:50 because he's got this private memory in his head of looking at his watch, and it's not in the notes, and he's banging that in there, sudden deterioration at 3:50. He's lifting that from notes that have happened, of events happened 13 months before, or more than 13 months, 14 months before, by the time he's writing this in May. 13 to 14 months. So that's a note. And then does that note stay in there? That's what I'm interested in. In the medical notes, does that get taken out? Because if it's not taken out, why didn't the defense also have a copy of it where it says it happens at 3:50? It happens at 3:50. So it's such a mixture of lies and fabrication after the event, and a mixture of him pretending to have remembered things. I mean, this is a nursing note, or I think this 3:50 figure. It's a nursing note. And then, do you know, and then he's got to do the thing about, well, even though Nurse Williams said the alarms are going off, yes, there weren't any alarms, because he's got to construct this fiction about him having this terrible presentiment that harm is being done. So he goes in there before, and he goes in there are no alarms. He's just looking at his watch at 3:50. No, he's not. No, there's a note here that has been. Did it remain in there? Did that sudden deterioration at 3:50 remain in there as a note? If it did remain in there as a note, then the defense would have had that to look at as well, and it would have pinned them down in the original trial not to rely on this discovery of the door data being wrong. Well, no, sorry, I've got to go back over that, because they were going with the idea that Nurse Williams leaving at 3:47 was it wasn't what it was in truth, which is her coming back at 3:47. There's something I'm trying to grasp here. He's got a note there that he's copying when they're working as a gang, working up this horrific persecutory report, and he's got the figure of 350 in there. So why does he need to, in the trial, add in this fictional element of looking at his watch at 350, and then have this interchange with Myers about, well, how did you remember the exact time? Because it was in the note here that when the desaturation happened, and that's because the alarms were going off. Now, whether it was Nurse Lucy Letby who was at the incubator and called him in, that's another element, and it could have been somebody else, couldn't it? And a different nurse. I don't know if I've got any further forward. It just feels as though this is an exploratory video, just to see what other people think as well. I'm convinced this line here, which has been underlined in this document: staff nurse Letby at incubator and called Dr. Jayaram to inform of low saturations, is not his memory. He's copying a note there. He's copying a note that he then does he make a mistake? He just creates this new thing later, and somehow this email doesn't come to light for the police or the CPS, or gets to the defense so that they can use it. Somehow it's occluded, and then somehow it's found again. Allegedly comes out, doesn't it? Supposedly comes out when they're looking into the managers on not part of Hummingbird, as a different operation. That's the story that the police tell us, That's the story of it. It's a note. He's copying that from a note, which are later, clearly they must be, because the defense had, presumably, they had the medical notes as well to look at, and that line isn't in there, and it's because it's been taken out by someone in that gang of people. That gang of consultants has taken that note out there. But have they also taken out the note sudden deterioration at 350? If that note was in there, why does it could still be in there, that note? That could still be in the medical notes for baby K, sudden deterioration at 350, written after it's happened. Either a nursing note or Jayaram himself, or Dr. Smith, was it? The person that was helping him and doing the intubations and not doing them right with the right size tube. It could have been. There's something. I don't know. There's something not right. I'm just trying to figure out why he has to construct this story. Why does he believe he has to construct a story of no alarms going off and him having the presentiment? Why would he choose that? That's what's puzzling me. Why couldn't he choose alarms going off? Let's say I don't think it was necessarily Lucy Letby in that room at all. A nurse, possibly Lucy Letby, coming out to get him. Why couldn't he choose that? And that the fake story could still go on. This nurse is still deliberately. Well, that's the thing. Why would you do it and then call the doctor? Because you've allegedly switched the alarms off so nobody can hear it. But the alarms were heard by Nurse Williams. It's such a poisonous concentration of distortion, lies, and fiction by Jayaram. And that's why he's been caught out in it. But there's other elements here. And for me, it's around, there's an absolute piece of fraud and perverting of the course of justice by an amendment of these medical notes that did not get that line, staff nurse Letby at incubator, and called Dr. Jayam to inform low saturations. Had he had it in his mind, Dr. Jayaram, to do what he did very soon after, within a couple of weeks after, 2 weeks after, just slightly less than 2 weeks at the meeting, that he goes with Breary and Holt to pique their interest, and then it becomes part of his formal statement. When he's doing that, when he's changing it for the police and lying to the police, when he's perverting the court of justice, and then eventually he commits perjury twice by missing this bit out, it doesn't make sense to me that he would have written this in this email. That's where I am. Wouldn't he have known he's hostage to fortune, as it were, that he's actually put down, he's communicated it to all his mates already, and that's become official, even though it doesn't come to light? And that's why I say it's deliberate why this hasn't come to light. It had to disappear. It had to disappear, this email. Deliberately so. Collusion again, I think, with the police involved. Or certainly that group of doctors to hide this email from the police. Or the police were aware of it and said, we better not include that. So the defence can't have that one. Let's drop that. Stroke CPS, let's drop that. No, let's not include that in the bundle that the defence get, because they'll just destroy the case then, because he said, look, Lucy Letby came out and got him. Destroys their story, just destroys Jayaram's fiction, doesn't it? But why would he have been so cavalier and almost, is he that kind of daring that he thinks, well, no, I've told the gang that she came out to get me. Now, putting aside it might not have been her at all. Let's just say with the idea that he believes it was, because he's written it from the notes here just a couple of weeks before. Is he so cavalier that he thinks he can just get away with it? That's perhaps the kind of narcissistic hubris of Jayaram, that he thinks, well, I don't have to be accountable for what I've said here. We can fix it, as they clearly did. Somehow they did. What was it? Just happenstance and just fortunate that this email never got to the site of the defence? Myers never saw it. Solicitor never saw it for Lucy. Is that just happenstance? No, it's got to be deliberate. And I maintain that they've been messing around with the medical notes. I know I've said this loads of times. I won't let it go. I don't know how we can. There's absolute fraud of those medical notes, and that's been taken out, that line of the medical note in relation to baby K. Well, it was, medical stroke nursing notes. So yeah, but the deterioration at 350. Well, yeah, it just tells me the whole thing is from notes. He's working this up. When's he said? 4th of May. He's putting it all in there. These are my ones, over to you. That's how he ends the email. These are my ones, over to you. He's writing it all from notes. If he was in storytelling mode here, that he becomes to the police in his statements and in the court twice, 2 trials in relation to baby K. Why isn't he putting here? Because this is all about getting the gang on board, peaking, maximising it. Why isn't he telling them? I looked at my watch. Why isn't he telling his gang members the story of him having this presentiment that Lucy might be causing harm in this email to baby K? and him looking at the watch, and there were no alarms going, and he just finds her there. Why wouldn't he do that here? Because that's the intention of this email, is to build up suspicion, to add everything, to pile. How much can we get on our plate here that we can then serve up to the police to get them really hungry for it, to increase their appetite? Why wouldn't he tell his friends about that? What he then tells the police and the jury and in the court. It tells you that it's total, when we know it's fabrication. But this is just another proof that how much of it's total fabrication, his story of that night. Every element of it. And that's why it all fell apart. And that's why even the appeal court judge says, well, you may think that the evidence given by Dr. Jayaram is not reliable. And this thing, the danger here is when people say, well, maybe he just forgot. No, he's not. We're talking about a period of just less than 2 weeks here. Around 2 weeks between this email and when he's telling this completely different story. He didn't write from the notes here and then have a different memory of a different story happening 2 weeks later. That doesn't make any sense at all. He hasn't flipped from using notes as the source to using his memory of the source, although he does. That's literally what he does in the trial. That's what he chooses to do. But what I'm saying is there's a breach there. That doesn't make sense that you would do that unless you're lying. Unless you're lying, you think, I've got to get this over the line just to get them involved. And then he's hostage to fortune to that, as are all the people in receipt of that email. They've all perverted the course of justice because they know full well that everything else that is talked about in relation to the Baby K incident ever after is the opposite of what they were told by Jayaram in that email. So they're fully aware and fully complicit in that, fully complicit in the perversion of justice. Every one of these characters. Anyway, I'm not sure I really quite got that. Those are my ones. Over to you. God, it's chilling, absolutely chilling. But those notes have been adulterated, and I don't know how we could ever find out the proof of that. But they are. That's that. All these other things, oxygen saturation's dropped to 40%. He's not remembering that from 14 months ago. He's looking at notes. And it would be counterintuitive based on what this email is meant to be doing to insert a line from memory that Nurse Lucy Letby is at the incubator and called Dr. Jayaram, i.e. called me to inform of low saturations. That would be counterintuitive to pull that from memory and insert it there in the email. Therefore, it has to have been in the notes. Therefore, those notes have to have been excised and adulterated, and there's been medical fraud there in terms of those medical notes, nursing notes. It has to be. I can't. It just has to be. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I can't let it go. I can't let it go. It's not his memory intruding into this paragraph here, amid all this other great detail that is not in his memory off the top of his head from 13 months ago. And it's counterintuitive that he would say that, because the whole purpose of this email is to pique the interest. So yeah, I know I'm repeating, but I just think it's the notes, man. It's the notes.